we are going to be talking about specifically a planting of this fruit tree in this here pot, but this planting methodology is going to apply for your home garden, your home landscape. This is exactly what we did over here in our orchard here at Howell Park. We can answer after this, we can answer any questions that you have specific to this, but then also other fruit trees. And then also trees, just generally. So we're always kind of open to have any of those conversations. And so my name is Christopher Cooper. I'm the Director of Operations at Baton Rouge Green, which is an urban and community forestry nonprofit here in Baton Rouge. We have served the area for about 30 years, and we also administer the statewide UCF federal dollars for the state of Louisiana, which a lot of people actually don't know. And then here, my associate.
I'm Preston. I'm the agroforestry coordinator at Baton Rouge Green, and basically I help manage the orchards. We plant orchards in some housing authority neighborhoods, and we also spread the news about trees. We talk about trees and how they can best fit in the landscape, and how to plant the best trees in the right place. So if you guys ever need a resource, we are definitely a resource for planting trees. Don't hesitate to give us a call.
Yeah, absolutely. Today, Preston, you want to talk about the fruit tree we're going to be planting today a little bit?
So today we're going to be planting, this is an orange tree. It's basically a Washington navel, but it's a mutation of a Washington navel that was found in Venezuela. This is called Cara Cara orange. And it's an orange, it's pink inside. It's a bit sweeter and a bit more juicy than the regular orange. They do very well here, just like the Washington navel orange. So we're planting this here kind of just to increase the variety and see what else we can grow in this area. This orange is going to get kind of big, but we have this pot right here that'll keep it root proof, so the roots don't start to girdle and circle around the pot. That's why this is a special pot right here. It has the slits in the side of it, so when the roots go out, they don't go around the pot. They can kind of suffocate the tree from growing. And you guys will see that when we take this tree out. Another thing about this tree is this tree actually has some root suckers on it. We'll talk about this later. But so in order for trees to make it here, you really want to plant it to where it survives. So if they were to plant just the regular Cara Cara orange tree here, it probably wouldn't make it because of the winters and disease. So what they do is they graft trees together for disease resistance and to make sure they can survive in the environment. So we have a orange tree that's kind of native to this area. It's called Poncirus trifoliate, and that's the root stock. If you look at this tree, you can see it's two different trees put together, and this is the graft union right here where the two trees meet at. So this would be the Poncirus, and this would be the actual desired tree. So at one point, this was two stems that they basically grafted together to make this tree survive better in this area. But if you can see, it's starting to grow. These leaves right here and right here are very different from these leaves up here. So if you allow this tree to continue to grow and you don't cut these off, eventually they'll take over the tree and they would outcompete the tree, and it'll only be this type of tree right here. But you can also take the opportunity to learn how to graft yourself and graft another tree into that one. But so basically we'll end up pruning these off before we plant this tree.
So this is the difference in the leaves. If your tree looks like this, unfortunately, this is no longer a desired tree, and you should probably think about removing that. Or if you want to get into grafting, this would be a great species to graft on some of your desired citrus, your citrus species. And so that's where it gets its name, trifoliate orange, with those three little leaflets there. So if you see that coming up from the base, you want to cut that off. If you see it as the whole species, as the whole individual, then you want to probably think about removing that. And so this is the leaf of a typical kind of citrus variety here. There is some differences in limes or lemons at times, and then of course kumquats are going to have a little bit smaller leaf as well. So just something to kind of think about. And so yeah, like Preston said, we're going to do a little bit of an experiment today where we're going to put this kind of traditionally larger growing species into this pot. We're going to hope that all the air pruning that happens to these roots will kind of maintain it in this pot for a little bit longer. And if we have to kind of pop it out at some point, 8 years from now, and then put it into the home landscape or into the orchard over there at Howell Park, we can certainly do that. And we'll go through some specific kind of pruning techniques to help keep your home citrus a little bit smaller as well. So we're going to start filling up this root pruning pot right here.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Good. So basically we'll fill the pot, but we will also mix in, we have some mushroom compost down here because we want the tree to have enough nutrients to survive. So we're going to mix some mushroom compost in here. Today we have a shovel right here. We have a stake right here. This is the stake. This will help it keep it sturdy from the wind. So after we plant it, we'll stake it in with this. It'll help it kind of establish itself. You know, we use the shovel for digging, mixing materials. And we also have some mulch right there. That'll keep weeds from growing on the top of it.
This is, I think it's 137 quarts, so I'll let you do the math. Okay. Right. Yeah, and you can, this is, if you're looking to kind of plant a tree in kind of long-term or semi-long-term in a pot at home, this is probably about the smaller size that you want to think about here. You could go down to like a 15-gallon, but it's going to fill that out in a number of maybe 3 to 5 years. And so we really want to think about kind of a little bit larger where we kind of maintain that for a little bit longer. You know, if I was thinking, like, if I had a home and I was wanting to plant in something about this size, I would think about planting maybe something smaller, like a kumquat. Something I can set in there and I could leave it in that for a long period of time. Maybe a pineapple guava. If you had 2 of them, you could plant like a blueberry, different fruit blueberry varieties as well.
How about fig?
Yeah. A fig actually I think would do pretty well as well, because when we think about like what a species desires, you know, you think about like where that species is coming from. And so figs are native to the Mediterranean, the North and South Mediterranean. And so that's something that you think about that climate. It's going to be a dry climate, you know, kind of arid soils. And so a pot inherently is kind of that. As long as you're not kind of overwatering it, I think a fig would do fairly well in here.
We get to the top now. We might need y'all to help us get this pot down.
Well, this so yeah, so we have. Absolutely,
yes. Put it in its place first.
We got the nice display here for all the good people, so we're doing the whole thing. And so the first thing I like to do is just to.
If you guys want to crowd around, because he's going to show you some parts of the plant that you don't normally get to look at when you're planting a tree.
Okay, so what we're looking at here, and then I guess watch out for, I know they're trying to take some video here, so I guess be mindful of that. But basically what we're seeing is this girdling root that we're talking about. This is a solid pot. And so that's one of the big issues with these containerized pots here. You know, it's really portable. We can put this in our minivan and go home with it. But the issue is there are going to be a lot of girdling roots along the side. And I can deal with these girdling roots here. Typically what you do is just kind of clip it off before the elbow. And so before it kind of crooks, you just lop it off right there. And we're just going to do that a series of times and try to loosen up the side here a little bit more.
And this doesn't damage?
That's a great question. It absolutely damages it. So yeah, so it absolutely damages it. So the issue is when you're doing this, you want to make clean cuts. And those clean cuts can then seal up that wound. It can heal the wound a little bit more. If you're ripping it or maybe have unsharp pruners like maybe I have right now, yeah, that adds a little bit more wear and tear to it. But with these, you know, I can see all of these wounds and I can see all of these girdling roots, and I can go through here and clip this, and then anything kind of a little bit smaller, I can just kind of loosen up a little bit. And so we're just going to go in here and see, y'all thought I was crazy before. Y'all are about to lose faith in me, I promise. So we've done this quite a bit, and we find that citrus stock and generally just a lot of tree stock is not as well managed from a very early age. And so this is, I think it has to do with they're seeding it or taking cuttings, and then they go through and then they take it maybe in a kind of a growing cell, and then when they do that, they don't address the roots, they don't do any root pruning, and so from a very early age, a lot of times there's some severe root defects right there at the middle. This is a little bit more mature one than I usually like to do this to, but for the sake of this experiment and for the sake of this conversation we're having today, I think this is a really good, yeah, this is good to kind of dive in on this a little bit more.
And in some cases, root pruning, when you prune the roots, it encourages root growth in some other places too. So it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes you got a tree that's root bound in the pot and you go cut the roots off at the bottom, it'll encourage it to grow even better.
So, yeah. So anytime you make a cut, you know, it's just only natural. Just like if you get a cut on your hand or something, you know, all the white blood cells and everything is just going to rush to that point, try to seal it up and build new tissue. The same is going to happen with this, and they're going to put out some new kind of little fibrous roots going in the right direction instead of it going this way. And I've pulled dead trees out of the ground. I've been in the ground for 6-7 years. And they still have that girdling root. That root never kind of pops out here. And this is becoming a little bit more difficult than to get to the center here than I really wanted to bargain with today. But you can tell it looks really nice. We're looking at nice kind of full fibrous roots. There's a little kind of knot right there. We do want to clip off.
What's that word you keep using?
Girdling roots. I know. I should have gone over basic vocabulary. Not basic vocabulary, but my vocabulary before the start of this. But yeah, so girdling roots are going to be something that is developing, and it's going to go around. Maybe that's directly around the trunk, or maybe that's down here, and it's going to inhibit the ability for more lateral roots to go out and establish itself.
Lateral
so,
is outwards away from the tree.
Yeah, thank you, Preston. Thank you for keeping me grounded always. And so basically, we find quite often, and we can actually, if we do have a chance to walk over to the garden, the orchard later on, which we may not have, you can see some examples of roots that have kind of wrapped around and wrapped under, and you see no lateral roots. We see no fibrous roots over in that direction, and that's something sometimes we can't actually come back from, and we're just going to have that tree for a number of years, and it's going to fall over eventually in a storm or whatnot. So here, it's kind of hard to get some images of it, but basically what's happening here is all of the roots are basically they went straight down like they did in their grow tube, and now they're kind of going all in the same direction. So what we're going to do is just going to make a couple of cuts here and maybe here. So these roots are going to grow out and go out, like they're going to be some new ones forming, and they grow out in the good direction here. This one's all tangled, and we'll do the same sort of thing so we can get some more action up in here. And unfortunately, I can't find what the big issue is here on this side. So we're just going to have to go with it. But I imagine you can't really see it, but basically you can see two major roots kind of coming through right here, and neither of them are kind of assuming this niche, you know, getting here and filling out this part of the plant. They're crossing a little bit as well. I think maybe for the sake of conversation, we're gonna get crazy, and y'all are gonna lose faith in me. I promise. Someone just sneezed, you know. They are. Yeah. So what I did was I just lopped that off right there, and there's one behind it, and these were kind of wrapping around, twisting around each other like a braid. And so what I did was just clip that off, and I hope that this populates this side of the plant here. And other than that, I think we're looking kind of halfway decent. And so, relatively speaking. So, as Preston was saying, you can see the two different barks here of the citrus stock, as well as the Poncirus orange here. And so we'll just lop off all of those. Watch out, because they have very large thorns. Get all this mess off.
Do you have to constantly keep doing that to
Yes. All throughout the year. We actually, if we go to the archery, you guys will see we knock them off every time we go over, and they come back. So you definitely got to stay on top of it. And sometimes you may see someone with an orange tree in their yard, but the oranges don't taste too good. And if the leaves look like those trifoliate leaves, it's probably been taken over by the rootstock.
They taste a little turpentine, you know.
Some people drink it though. Some people sit there and drink it. Trust me.
Okay, so we have a poor little root ball here. You know, some would say, you know, don't worry about pruning, you know, until like this starts to establish, and then go back and pruning, because you want all these solar panels to remain on the tree to help pump nutrients into here. I'm of the opinion that, you know, with the trees that we manage, I don't always have the time to go back to it for another year or so, and then all of a sudden we have all of this excess tissue going up in areas that I didn't want to go in the first place. So I like to prune upon planting here, and so what we're going to be trying to do today is to establish kind of a scaffold. We want anywhere from like, you know, 3 to maybe 5 different main branches, and we want to inhibit it to an extent from going straight up. We want it to go out, and we want to kind of keep some airflow here in the middle here. So I like this branch where this one's going, kind of straight out in this direction. It's got some nice branches. And then I like this one. I don't like everything that's happening here, but I do like that one a lot. I don't like the closeness of these 3 here. So if you think about these, or like some of these live oaks here behind us, these are all going to fuse together, and it's going to be a weak junction. So what we're going to do is just make a quick little cut. I know, we're all a little nervous. I'm a little nervous. And then we have these kind of coming back into the canopy, and again, that is something I don't want to see. What is that? That's 6 or 7 different branches coming out of one juncture. That's weak already. That's making my knees weak. So we're gonna go in here and clip out that. We have something kind of coming in this way, populating that, and just think about like the kind of niches in the tree. We don't want a ton of overlapping. We don't want things to be conflicting in the immediate future. So we'll go through, and these 2 are kind of going in the same direction here, so we can kind of eliminate that and just start to open that up just a bit.
Now, what you're cutting off there, can
those are branches.
Propagate those branches?
Yeah. So you Preston, you want to take her through that a little bit?
So basically, if you wanted to make cuttings from these, you could make cuttings from them. You have to keep them moist. You have to peel off the bottom leaves and keep them moist. But you could also take these buds off here and do something called bud grafting to like another rootstock like this. Okay. So if you found a tree that you like, you basically take a branch, and basically, if you see this leaf scar, this is where the leaf was, this is where the bud is. So if you're able to cut this branch off like he's pruning it, if you were to prune this right here, a branch would come out of there. So basically, if you take this bud off here and you were to lay it into this bark right here with a T-graft, then that bud would then come out next spring as this desirable tree, and you can manage it to make this the entire tree. So you can make cuttings out of these, but if you get a cutting like this to survive, which it all depends on how well you take care of it, it'll grow up and be a huge tree, and you won't be able to reach the fruits, you know? And it may not be able to survive here as well, too. So that's why you always want to try to get into a rootstock that can survive disease, some of the freeze and stuff like that.
So basically a conversation maybe for another time. Grafting, if you look up T-grafting for citrus, you know, our 2 big inhibitors of citrus here in South Louisiana is going to be our cold and then our moisture. So there's a lot of fungal-borne diseases, a lot of Phytophthora and other things happening. And so the trifoliate orange is resistant to both cold and fungal infections. And so it's the one that's kind of protecting our beloved citrus just a little bit. But yeah, back over here, what I did, I kind of like.
Do you want it?
Yes.
Let me think. No,
Don't
I
I
want
have
what would
to
you do?
choose the points?
So this, if you want to graft this into, I'm gonna go ahead and let him go. We're kind of loud. We can talk about that later though.
But basically is you know, for right now, I think I kind of like this branch. I may take it off a little bit more, but what I don't like is for it to kind of shoot up. And once this establishes, an easy kind of way to maintain your trees is if you see one of these that are just kind of shooting up, that has a lot of just like kind of it's called apical dominance, where it's just kind of shooting up to the sky, north-south like. We can go through and kind of take those off on a mature tree when we're trying to maintain it. But for right now, I want to leave it a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clip right above a bud that's going in a direction that I want it to go. So this bud is kind of pointed over here. We don't have a lot of action here. If you're picturing the tree in a 360-degree way, the tree is kind of going in that way. And other than that, I kind of like everything else that is happening here. I hope you all do too. And then the same where this is just kind of meandering up. I think this was kind of just pruned to get managed a little bit. And so we'll just kind of clip off the same way we did before. Oops. and clip to a bud that will kind of help it branch out a little bit. Whenever you prune, there's going to be a reaction, and so if you're pruning, if you're hedging, cutting it, which we don't recommend typically, it's going to branch out a bunch of lower branches. It's going to ignite some of those buds that are a little bit dormant right now, and so that is all good. I like what's happening. We're going to leave the tag on just for more people to kind of see what we're dealing with.
That root flare.
Oh yeah. So
I'm gonna mix this up while you talk about that. Yeah.
Oh wait, look at this. Okay, so this is actually something I didn't see before, but basically we do have a really good example of that is a girdling root there. So if you imagine that this tree may be getting 4 inches in diameter in the next 5 years, you know, that root is going to be a few inches diameter as well, and so that's going to eventually, you know, cut into the side there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to clip that off and just make a clean cut as much as we can to clip it out so those new roots are going to grow out outside. And so the same sort of thing is happening, and this is what we're talking about here, is you see all those kind of entangled roots? So we're going to clip that off, a little entangled root right there. And we're just going to make a little double clip.
I don't want to throw this in your face.
We don't have to remove the whole thing. We just have to remove one chunk, and so it's not going to fuse back together. And this one's going straight down. And so you can see this tiny little rootlet happening, and that's where I'm going to prune to. So hopefully that this little rootlet will take over from here. And I feel pretty good about that now. I'm glad that we caught that. Sometimes we don't. And Mr. Preston's got everything looking good. And whenever so we've established now where the trunk flare is, and so whenever you're planting, so again, we're dealing with a lot of moisture here in our soils. This year, kind of excluded, I guess. But typically, we want to plant. So the top of the root ball, the top of this flare here, is, and when we're talking about flare, we're talking about, you know, it's going out, you know. So if you're thinking about a mature tree, it shouldn't look like a telephone pole coming out of the ground. It should be kind of flaring out on both those sides, or all the sides. And so this is going to be, you know, 2 to 4 inches above the rest of the soil line. And so we're just going to have to kind of integrate that in, sprinkle it in as best as possible. We will have to kind of water it a little bit and settle it because we removed all the soil within the root ball. And Preston, can we get another maybe half bag or so in there? And I'm always so bad about, it's really quite embarrassing about planting like off the angle of the pot. So like I like, you have a center pot, you can plant right in the middle of it, and I always plant just a few inches off, and so you can see it for years to come. And I think this one's a little straight.
You guys want to stand back and see? The wagon may not be level. The ground is probably crooked. That's
yeah,
what I'm saying.
yeah. I like to blame the wagon. So all of this is going to settle. So we're dealing with potting soil here. All of this is going to settle, and we're going to have to monitor this kind of in the next few months, and we may have to come back and add some more soil. But we want to make sure that that flare is exposed here. And then if you would put that stake on there. So we've removed a lot of rooting material here. And so it's going to be kind of unstabilized, destabilized until it can really establish itself a little bit. And so we like to use stakes, and just a single stake, and we'll kind of tie it in a couple spots right up against the trunk there. So to resist it from kind of swinging back and forth and destabilizing some of those root hairs there. But the thing with stakes though is you always have to monitor them, and you're going to have to eventually remove it or adjust it in about 8 months or a year from that point. Or you'll see a lot of times if you go to kind of a planting, and you'll go to something that maybe in a parking lot somewhere, and you'll see the stakes still in there, and the tree has grown into the stakes, which is then hurting the tree. So we're going to just get a couple of ties on there and get it watered in. Get some, I guess some mulch on top would be wonderful. We say no planting is finished until we have about 2 to 4 inches of mulch on top. This is kind of this is a pine straw that we like to use a lot. It doesn't run away in the water, and it breaks down really well. We find when you mulch, you know, about 2 to 4 inches deep, and then you always think you don't want it to be kind of what's called volcano mulching. You don't want it to be up on the tree like that. That's holding in moisture. It's going to kind of cause some girdling roots as well, perhaps in the future. And you want to think of it more as a donut. So you want to be able to see that flare the entire time. I'm kind of good with that mulch. That looks like a pretty happy tree to me. We'll get some ties on it and get it watered in. Yeah, thank y'all in Baton Rouge for having us, and we can certainly take as many questions as y'all want on citrus, on potting, on in-ground, fruit trees, any other trees as well.